Okay, here we are as promised. I'm going to start doing the butt plate. And the butt plate I got is this one here. It's one I cast. It's taken from the Faber rifle. And I like it a lot. It's a real nice one. It's not. It's got that English influence, but it doesn't have the sharp point. It's more rounded. And just got nice steps in it. It makes a nice butt plate. And of course, since I cast this in real brass instead of the modern bronze that you find, it's a whole lot easier to inlet, and where you need to, you can close up little gaps by simply tapping on it here and there, because it's very flexible. First thing I got to do though is draw this out. I got to do a 14-inch pull, so I've got to figure out where the trigger is going to be, which is somewhere in there. 14 inches, I'll mark right there. And then I simply lay this on the board, and I want the 14 inches on the outside of the butt plate. So I look down here, make sure it's straight, make sure the top is in line with the butt plate. And I go ahead and mark it. I'm going to mark first where this little step is, and then I'll simply draw around the inside. And there we go. Now this step here, you can do one of two ways depending on how your butt plate is. You can saw that down, or you can just cut this line here, just the back, and then chisel all this. But I'm lazy. What I'm going to do is cut halfway down to the point where the butt plate is. And that'll give me a chance to get the butt plate down, but leave a little bulk that will support the inside here on the butt plate itself. So next step will be to take this over to the bandsaw and whack off all this. Now you'll notice I'm working on the left side because when you put this in the bandsaw, if you were to draw it on the right side, you got this cheek piece in the way and it's hard to hold things steady. So I know that the other side is pretty flat, so I'll put that against the table on the bandsaw, and that way I'm not worried about it rocking or getting out of alignment. So hang on, I'll be right back. There, excuse me. Alright, I'm back. Got this sawn off roughly to shape, and what I got to do now is go in and smooth all this down and get rid of the saw marks. And different ways you can do that, of course. You can take, if you've got a belt sander, you can do that. Go in with a rasp, smooth it up, and of course different rasps will work differently, but you want to basically smooth that down so that once the butt plate is on, you don't see all those little kerf marks left behind on the edge where the metal and the wood hit together. So just take a few minutes and clean it up. And I'll probably give it a little bit of a curve too. And if you want to, you can even take your butt plate, set it in place, line it up with your center line, give yourself some marks that the curves in here won't make any difference, but you want to make it smooth wherever the butt plate is going to be touching. So that'll give you an idea of how far in you need to go. the other side here, same thing. Work it in. Pretty close. I'm going to go in with a smooth rasp. Now, as I said, a lot of the castings you get nowadays are not brass, they're bronze. Thanks to the EPA, we can't cast brass here in this country anymore unless you're a small operator like me or some of the other people I know who have their own foundries. We're too small for them to worry about, thank goodness. If you want to buy good brass pieces today, it's hard to find, but you might try going to muzzleloader builder supply, and Brian, the owner, has a lot of his parts cast in brass by a small foundry or small people that do it like this, and you'll find that working with real brass is very much different from working with the bronze. And it's more historically correct, of course. And it's looking pretty good. And if you want to get really persnickety with it, you can get in there with sandpaper and smooth it all out, but generally if you got a smooth rasp or a bastard file like this one here, that's plenty good enough. And you got to make sure you do the top too. Go back to my rasp. Around the heel. Lay this on there and make sure I don't see any saw kerfs anymore, and it's looking pretty good. There you go. Now I've got a little bit of rock in this, so I need to take this side down a little bit more. The tang on this side is not lining up with the center. It's I don't know, 1/8 of an inch off. So I'll just take this down a little bit right through here. And this can be because I didn't cut it as square as I wanted to on the bandsaw, or it just could be that being a brass casting, that when I cast this particular butt plate, I do it so it's almost flat, and then I then will bend it down. So it's just easier to cast that way. You can also hammer one of these out of thick sheet brass if you want to as well. I've seen a lot of originals done that way. And then on a soft leather pad that might be filled with lead shot or something, you can go in there with a ball peen hammer and just hammer that down, and that way you get that nice heel sticking out there, that bulbous area. But this one was cast, like I said, almost flat, with just this little piece sticking up, which is where I put the sprue, and then I just bent everything down to the shape that I wanted. It's getting a little closer. I'm going to take a little bit more off. And if you want to really get into this stuff, you could use a square and all that, but since I've sawn a little bit of way on both sides, they're not parallel with each other anymore. So it wouldn't make a lot of difference. It's more just a matter of trial and error here. Alright, I think that's close enough for now. So the next thing will be to start bringing the top down. I'm not going to worry about this at all because it's pretty close, but you got to bring the top down first. So let me get set up for that, and we'll carry on. Alright, now I got this set up. You can see I've got my center line here still on the gun. This is 2-inch wide butt plate, so I go in 1 inch from each side, and that'll give me the center line for the tang of the butt plate. And what I'm looking for now is that this last curve right here needs to go up against that shoulder. And so then I'll just draw around this. If any of you have been to my website, this is styled after my personal rifle, which is a James River Basin, about 1760, 1770 period. There's very few original pre-rev Virginia rifles that survive. Don't know how many were made because there's just no good records, but this is kind of my rendition, using ideas that were typical of the time period and maybe enlarging the butt plate a little bit and bigger lock, different barrel to make it a little bit earlier styling. Alright, next thing is I've got to take all this down, and of course most of us just have chisels to get in there and take all that down. And that's really the best way to do it, but I'm also lazy. I quite often will use a router to go in and trim out 90% of that, and then I'll finish up the edges, and that gets everything down fairly flush. But I will attempt to do this with just chisels again, so hang on, let me get my chisels out and I'll be right back. Alright, so I got my chisels out, and this is one thing that you really need if you want to build any guns and do any inletting, any carving. You need a good set of chisels, and like I mentioned before, these are all Swiss-made brand that you can get from Woodworker Supply online, and they're not cheap, but they're very, very well made, high quality steel. And will last a lifetime if you take care of them. Your other option is to go to flea markets and whatnot, try and find good chisels. You know, this one's a Buck, and Buck brand's a good one. Your best bet is also not to buy these cheapy ones imported from China. The ones you see with these crappy ferrules on them. These I use for scraping putty off the floor, things like that. That's about all they're good for. I've also changed a few of them into barrel scrapers by bending the tip over and resharpening the tip. But they're basically pretty much worthless. Alright, the first thing we got to do is stab around the outside. And I do not like to cut on the line because the chisel, because of the bevel, is going to be forced outward slightly, and you also want to undercut everything so that as you're fitting the brass into it, the brass is actually going to force the wood side to side slightly so that you get a nice tight fit in there. So we'll start off first by cutting inboard of the pencil line. And even though this is a curved area right here, you can cut straight. Just makes things go faster. You can clean that up later. And what I do when I'm doing this stabbing is I'll get it set, and then when I go to do the next one, I actually upend it and let the corner follow the cut I've just made, so I know that that side of the chisel is in line. If you pick it up and put it down again, you'll probably not get as clean a line. Like I said, you're not too worried about that this is all straight cuts with this chisel, because you're going to be cleaning it up later anyways. That's when you can get out your radius chisels. Now I'm going to use a gouge to get up here around the corner. Once again, coming in a little ways from that pencil line. Now we get to start cutting away all that waste. And depending on how the grain goes, depends on, we'll show you which way you cut, either this way or this way. It looks like I need to go the other direction, because this is starting to go in. So I'm going to flip this whole piece around. So hang on a second. Alright, now we'll continue on here. Tell you what, hang on a second. I'm going to actually reposition you guys to the other side of the bench so that you can see me better without my hands and chisels getting in the way. So, take a break. There you go. Now maybe you guys can see a little bit better. But as I was saying, we just start taking all this down, and you don't really want to go past your stab depths. Otherwise things might start chipping up. So you will have to go back and re-stab it a few times to get down to the depth that you want. And the curlier the wood is, more difficult that can be about things splitting out on you. So you're going to have to go careful, make sure your chisels are sharp. I'm going to go around and stab everything again. In this part, all you're trying to do here is get to the depth that you need to get this to set down in your flush. And I like them a little bit lower than that because I like to sand and file the wood down to fit the metal. So once I've gotten close to the depth I want, then I'll stop, work another area, and then have to come back and widen it out here and there where you need to. And you can use a small ruler to get in there and sort of measure that to see how deep you're going. That's okay there for now. Basically just hogging this out till I get to the depth I think I need. Starting to get close. At this end here, you can see that step, and you have to bring this down to that step because that's going to be basically the same height right through here. So I'm going to have to bring that down a little bit more. And I'm giving it a slight bevel, but I'll go in and with this 3/16 chisel, I'll make a flat area here, but leave the center domed, which will give a little bit of support to that butt plate that's hollowed underneath. Alright, I'm getting pretty close here. I'll clean up this top end a little bit more. Now, since these chisels have a bevel this way on them, if you stab straight down, it's going to leave a bevel this way. So you have to angle your chisel so that the bevel itself is what is straight up and down. That's why I'm angling this over right now. This is where I like my Dremels, because they can get in there and clean up some of these areas a lot quicker. But now I've got it pretty close. So the next step will be to put this in place, and then I'm going to take a scribe, make sure I've got it in the right position, take a scribe and run around and actually scribe a line that I will cut up to. And if you actually smooth this area a lot better than I did, you'll probably get a better scribe line. Mine's kind of blending in with rasp marks right now. So now the big trick is just to start chiseling this away, and I'll start on this tab at the top end first and sort of get that in, and then work my way down to the heel of the butt. Just take your time. It's starting to get pretty close. Now if you want to, another thing you can do is start sooting the underside of this as you're bringing it down, and that'll help show you where the outside of those lines are. And I think I might be at that point right now. So I'll light my candle here. Actually, it's a little oil lamp. So we're going to try and start bringing the edges out a little bit till this fits down fairly tight. And I think on this one I'll probably be doing the blind hook underneath too, and you'll get a chance to see me do that again. I think I did it on an earlier video, but some of you may have missed that. It's actually been quite a while since I built a gun from a blank like this. I've got so many patterns I can put on the duplicator that a lot of the guns I've been building have been done that way. But this one I don't have a pattern for yet, so I have to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to scribe the outside again just to make sure. But I can see some dark spots showing up. This little 3/16 inch chisel is good for these tighter areas, even doing radiuses. Let's see. Get in here with the gouge. You can see I'm pushing it down at an angle again. I'm worried about making sure that that beveled area is straight. Getting down here close. So I got maybe 1/8 of an inch down to go. So I'm going to reset my butt plate and give it a few more taps. Now, the basic trick to this is just undercut all your inlets and then bring them out wider as you need to. Because you want a good tight fit of wood to metal. So we go in now and trim up all the black spots. Just chipped out a big chunk. Save that, glue it back in. Still got to go down a little ways. It's still fitting on the sides nice and tight, but I haven't started to see much black on the bottom yet, which is when you know you start getting down close. So I'm going to keep at this for a few more minutes, and then I'll get back with you when we got this down tight. There's no sense watching all this. It's the same thing over and over. Just soot, fit, hammer, take it off, cut away the soot a little bit, especially on the sides. You want to just shave it basically, and just keep working until you get it down to where you start seeing black along the bottom edges here. So I'll be back in just a second after I get to that point. Alright, I got all that boring stuff done, and I got a good nice tight fit all the way around, and tight here on the edges. I had to go forward a little bit, and that's done by, you can see here the black on both sides, just taking that forward slightly right there so that the whole piece would just slide forward slightly, and that took up some of the gaps around the shoulders. So the next step on this is I'm going to put a screw through the heel, and on the back here where I've already got a hole, and once I get that done, then I'll go ahead and finish shaping down the bottom here and fitting it tight to the wood. And then I've got to do that blind hook on top. So when I get to that point, I will come back and show you how we do the blind hook. Putting the screw in the butt here is nothing special. Go at an 45-degree angle to these two surfaces. Screw it in, and of course all this will be smoothed down, and the head of the bolt, or the head of the screw, would be smoothed off to match as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and do the bottom, and then I'll show you how we smooth up the bottom part here and get it tight to the wood. And then comes the fun part. So hang on, I'll be right back. Alright, I've got the heel hole drilled, but you know, I used a modern countersink, and I really don't like those things. I don't know if you can see it well enough in this video, but there's lots of chattering going on in there, and that's because the modern made bits are made on machinery, and every flute is perfect. Everyone is spaced the same distance apart, so once it starts chattering, it just keeps on going. I find the best thing to do to clean these up is go to old tools. This is a 19th century countersink. It's all hand filed. I've actually made a number of these myself, and you use them in a, you know, brace and bit. And these, because the teeth are cut by hand, they're going to be a little bit different spacing between each one, and that will cut out that chattering completely. So I'm going to recut these holes a little bit deeper and use this countersink instead. Alright, so I've recut these, and I don't know if it shows up well in here, but you can see that it's much smoother inside that countersink using that old tool. Sometimes you just can't beat the good quality of the handmade tools of the old days, especially, you know, with the stuff coming out of China now. They just don't have the quality anymore, and the old timers knew about that chattering, and I think they deliberately made those teeth a little bit different. Every one I've picked up and looked at, the teeth were all slightly different, and that, like I said, reduces the chattering, and I'm sure they realized that, and that's why they did that deliberately. So I'm going to go ahead and get this screwed on, and then I'm going to start smoothing this down. I actually, this side is a little bit taller than the other, so I'm going to file all that down and smooth it out, and we'll go from there. Then it'll be on to the bottom section and fitting it tight to the wood. Alright, I'll be right back. And when I'm putting in wood screws, I like to lubricate them, and the best way to do that is simply heat them up. So I'll do here. Just a little bit of heat. Melt some beeswax on it. And that will help keep it from stripping out. Now we'll go ahead and put this in. You can see it's going in nice and smooth. Alright, now I'm just going to smooth all this up. Like I said, I got a little high spot here I want to take down, blend it in so it matches the other side. And we'll do that with a coarse file here. Putting in a heel screw like this does two things. One, it draws that butt plate forward so it goes in nice and tight into the inlet. And second of all, it's a protection. When you set this on the ground, it'll hit that screw more than it will the brass, so it'll wear less. And that's kind of important if you're setting it on the ground, loading it up, especially on hard surface of some sort, but even on dirt, it makes a big difference to have a little bit of extra strength right there. And I'm just shaping this down to match the brass. If you're taking this down and you realize you're cutting too deep into that slot, pull the screw out a little bit, use a hacksaw, and cut the slot a little bit deeper, then put it back in and go at it some more. You know, you don't want to file that away so that you can't get the screw out again. You also might notice I did it so that the screw slot's going up and down. I'll do the bottom one the same way. Tang screw will be lined up front to back as well, and that just makes everything look a little bit cleaner when you've got all the screw heads lined up. And I'll get a finer file here. Just clean that up nicely. Pretty good. Now I'm not going to do anything with the top until I get that hidden hook in there. Then I can take all the wood down to match once this is down nice and tight. Right now you can see it's a little springy, which is okay because that hook will bring that right down. So the next thing will be putting on the bottom screw. I've got the side here nice and tight to the wood, but this side is up a little bit, which is not a big deal. This screw is going to draw everything down, and once this screw is in good and tight, then I'll, being brass, I can tap this down to match the wood, because the wood I know is correct right now. And I'll have to trim a little bit off the toe, but not a big deal, because it's a little proud. I could have left a little more wood on the bottom, but I guess I didn't measure right. Anyways, let me get this hole drilled. And I'm just using a cheap set of screw pilots like this. They're just thin sheet metal, but they're sized to fit whatever screw you're working on. And you want to make sure you're perpendicular to the surface of the metal right here. Alright, get that out the way. Now I've got a little bit shorter screw to go in this area, and once again I'm going to heat it up and put a little beeswax on it. Put that out the way. And keep in mind that this is still pretty warm. Don't want to be grabbing it with your fingers. Alright, we'll bring it around the center. That's nice. And that did bring it down a little bit. So I got a pretty good tight fit. I'll probably have to bend the toe down just a little bit to make it hit the wood. But the trick now is we simply take a ball peen hammer. It's got a nice rounded face here, you know, a domed face. And I'm just going to lightly tap around the edges and bring all that down right to the wood. Don't hammer too hard down here at the bottom or you might break a piece of wood off. That's why I'd rather take this off, bend it separately in the vise, put it back on and rehammer. That's looking pretty good. Now if you're using a one of the modern castings that are made out of bronze You can hammer a little bit like this to get a small hairline closed up, but it's just really too tough. You're not going to be able to get much movement out of it. And you can't heat it up and anneal it like you can brass to make it soft. All it's going to do is make it more brittle, which is the last thing you want. So in that case, all you got to do is spend a lot more time sooting, fitting, sooting, fitting, sooting, fitting, until you get it down so that you see a nice black soot line all the way around. You can see why the old timers, love brass, just because it's so much easier to work. And you could do the same thing with the wrought iron butt plates that were forged in the 18th, 19th century, but the modern cast ones, again, too stiff. You can't do it. All right, it's looking pretty good. Alright, if I can't get a fingernail under there, then I know it's a good fit. And when I go back and file and polish, of course, all those little hammer marks along the edges will go away. So the next thing will be to do the you want to just go around. Hammer it tight to the wood. And then when I can't get a fingernail under there, I know it's good and tight. I got little gaps up here at the front of the corners, but I still need to bring this tang down, so those will go away as I get that hidden hook put in there and bring that front tab down. Alright, I think we got it. So let me get set up for the hook portion, and we'll do that next. Okay, I'm going to do the blind pin on this butt plate, and what I've done is I've cut out a little piece of brass here with a hook on the bottom and a little steel hook, and this is just some 1/8 inch thick brass, and this is some 1/8 inch mild steel that I cut, tapered to a point, and left a hook on the top. And when these go in, this hook will be down in the wood, and then the butt plate will basically slide under that and hook together in the front, so that it will hold the front end of the butt plate down tight without having a screw in the top that kind of messes up the looks of that butt plate. So the next step for me will be to silver solder this tab to the inside of the butt plate right about here. And so that will be what I've got to do next. So what we'll do is actually I use a metal spring clamp to hold it in place, making sure I got everything lined up here. And we'll put a little flux on it. that little torch wasn't doing it, so I brought out the big guns. This is an oxy-acetylene torch. That brass was just not getting hot enough, the butt plate itself. So now I can see the silver solder flowing nicely around it. That should do it. Alright, we'll let that cool down. Do any cleanup I might need to do, which doesn't look like much. And then we'll inlet these two pieces into the stock. Alright, this is cooled down now. I put it in the water just to speed it up a little bit. And now you can see that tab is on there. And you got to make sure you have that cut facing forward. You can also just solder on a solid tab and then cut it later, but this just saves a little time. And you can see how this hook now will fit up under there and lock in place. So the next step will be to go ahead and cut a inlet for this to set down into, and then we drive this pin, the hook in place. Alright, so hang on, I'm going to get back to the other end of the bench. Alright, what I've done now is I have basically laid this down beside the cutout, and I've drawn the opening that I need. And you have to remember that you need to make this cutout in here a little bit longer towards the back, because you're going to actually set the butt plate in shy of going into place, and then when you push it forward it'll lock under that metal hook. So you have to make room for that sliding motion. And I'm going to actually cut this with a Dremel because it's just so much faster and easier, and to get nice clean sides. So I will do that first. You can see how deep I need to go here. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to clean up the ends a little bit, square them up. Alright, that's good depth. So I've cleared that so nothing's bottoming out. And the next thing will be to put the hook in, and the hook of course faces towards the rear, and I'm going to drill a small undersized pilot hole. The reason you want to keep these edges, square, is that will help it to bind in the hole, especially if you got a round hole in those corners. Bite in there and it won't rotate, and actually will keep it from coming back out. So let me get a small bit, drill a hole there. I'm going to go right up against the back end of that cutout. It's just slightly undersized hole. And then we start driving this down in. And then use a punch to bring it on down. And if it bends on you, just bump it back where it needs to go. Let's see how that is. Start off with it being what might be a little high, and you can always bring it down. It's a little harder to bring it back up. I need to open up this cup just a little bit. Chips out the way. Alright, let's try that again. Alright, down, forward. Alright, what I need to do is, this is a little too square. I can see where it's hitting here, so I'm going to actually file this notch so that it's got a slight bevel to it going this way, and that will allow it to slide under and lock in place. So hang on, let me file that a little bit and I'll be right back. Alright, don't know if you can see it real clearly, but I filed it so that there's a slight angle to the cut now going out. We'll see how that works. It's just a bit of trial and error until you get this so it sets down nice and tight. Alright, so I can feel it actually latching underneath that hook. The hook needs to go down just a little bit. And I think I'm going to have to cut the notch a little bit deeper to clear the front of the hook. That way it'll bring it in nice and tight. So let me cut that a little bit deeper. Alright, let's see how that does now. Catching, but I need to get the notch just another 1/16 of an inch deeper. So what was happening was the actual tip of the hook here was hitting the back of the hook on the inside, the steel hook. So I just took that front edge back a little bit, and we'll see if that's enough. Alright, that's pretty close. I'm going to take it back just a little bit more. I can still see a few gaps here. It's not fully seating in. Alright, took a little more off the front of that hook. And that's looking pretty good. Now I'll try wiggling it. And I can see I got a little rocking going on. So I'm going to take the steel hook down just a little bit more. Like I said, this is just a bit of trial and error. You really have to just see what works best. It's always better to go slowly. If you drive the steel hook in too far, then it's a problem getting back out without the hole it's in wallowing out. There, I'm going to take it just a little bit more. Alright, that's got a good fit now. I actually have to shove it under there, and there's no more wobbling going on. So that should be a real good fit. So that's all there is to that. And that's, yeah, good. Just tight enough. So we got the hook just right on the butt plate, and the hook inside, and it's just in exactly the right spot. And down to the right depth. So it's going to hold this down nice and tight when you're got the butt plate in place. And that way, you know, like I said, it eliminates having any screws or anything on top that just, you know, especially if you're going to engrave, it just, you know, interrupts all that nice engraving you're going to be putting on there. So that's just a matter of screwing this back down, and then we start shaping down the wood. Let's see what I do with my screwdrivers. Oh, this one. So we do the heel first, because that's going to draw it not only down but forward, and then you do the toe screw. So that's nice and solid now. Bend that forward tab down a little bit. I can feel it bouncing there. But that's a good fit. So that's pretty much it for putting on a butt plate like this. It just takes a little bit of time, but in the end result it'll look a whole lot better. And like I said, the next step now will be taking all the sides down to match up with the wrist that I've already got shaped out. So until the next one, you guys take care out there.